What up? Welcome back to another episode of Spiritually Savvy. I'm Savannah Pidcock. I am your host. I'm an intuitive coach, Akashic Records channel, quantum energy healer, and spiritual teacher. And we're here to talk all about the wild and crazy experiences that happen in my life and the spiritual wisdom that I glean from them and then share with the beautiful women that I work with. So, we don't in my programs go into as much depth about my life. I'll use my life as an example for sure, but the purpose of this podcast is to really share all the nitty gritty stories, the human experience in all its glory, ups and downs, twists and turns, and how we take that experience and really bring wisdom from it and how we grow at the end of the day. So I'm super excited. It is finally not so hot in New York. There's been a crazy heat wave this week as I've been recording this. So today I was so grateful for the 75-degree and kind of cloudy, although it's brightening up. You can see it behind me if you're watching the video feed of this. And yeah, I'm just so excited to be here. I'm gearing up for a launch for my group program. We open the doors 4 times a year, and this is going to be the Confident It Girl module. We're going to be talking all about embodied confidence, how to step into the fullness of your personal power, especially as a woman, what that feminine power really looks like, how to understand the basics and the nuances between masculine and feminine energy. And it's just going to be so good. The pre-sale for it is going out shortly, probably as this podcast gets released. It is already out. So make sure if you are at all interested in my work, you check that out because I only open it up 4 times a year, and the bonuses always during the pre-sale are like so juicy and more than worth it. And so, yeah, I have that going on. I have a lot of beautiful women entering my space for one-on-one. There's so much excitement happening in my business right now. We just, my friend Grace and I just launched our retreat. That's going to be in October in Tulum, October 23rd to 27. And it's been a big dream of mine to do retreats. Like, I've wanted to lead retreats for years, just like I've wanted to have an ongoing, professionally produced podcast for years. So I guess the month of June of 2025 was the month that we were like, we're just going to fucking do it, which really aligns with the energetics and the astrology of this month. You know, we had in my group program last night the new moon in Cancer call, and the big message I was hearing around this energy right now is just like, it's fucking go time, bitch. Like, it's go time. It is like you've already done the work, you've already set up the systems, you've already done the inner work in self that needs to happen. Now it's time to go do. And frankly, you might already be doing it and just not even realizing. There's been this really interesting energetic I've been noticing in myself and many of my clients that our minds, because timelines are moving so fast on the earth plane in 2025. I feel like we say this in spiritual world, like we've been saying this for years, like timelines are speeding up, timelines are speeding up. And like the reality is they are. If you think back and look back to what your life felt like, and it's hard sometimes to remember that, but I always use this example of last summer the movie Twister came out, like the remake of the movie Twister. And in advance of seeing that remake version, I watched the 1996 version of Twister. And it was fascinating how much more simplistic the plot, the acting, the drama, the nuance. It was a lot simpler, and it moved frankly slower. You'll even notice a bigger difference if you watch even older movies. It's because the collective consciousness is increasing in capacity in what we can hold in our awareness as human beings, and how much subtlety of energy at the end of the day we can understand. So it's you see it on a collective scale. You can probably see it in your own life, that if you think back to who you were, you know, 1, 3, 5, 10 years from now is a very different version of you. And it's not just because you're getting older. It's because if you're listening to this or watching this, you are doing the work on yourself to tap into more of your soul potential. And our souls are so vast and so infinite and just have so much that it's hard to even understand with our limited human minds. So, yeah, I don't know why I got off on that tangent, but classic. Oh, the energy of June 2025. Yeah. it's go time. Like you have been doing it already. Your mind might be lagging behind understanding that you're already doing it. And this is a beautiful time with like, as I'm recording this, it's just been the solstice, the Jupiter Cazimi on the 24th, the new moon on the 25th. And it's this beautiful invitation to get super reflective of like, what have you accomplished and who are you actually being right now? Because it is very different than who you were being in the past. And with that increased energetic capacity, with this newfound understanding of who you are in your reality right now, what are you creating? What are you going after? And what do you really fucking want? And I keep harping on this with my clients and my different spaces with them. I created a broadcast channel on Instagram. Sidebar, I've been trying to do that for years. And for some reason the tool wasn't open to me, and all of a sudden I like saw it when I was on the desktop version of Instagram like last week. So now I have a broadcast channel. So if you like listening to, it's sort of like going to be a really mini condensed form of this podcast. So if you want just like a little hit of me talking and talking about the energies, like you can join that space. And yeah, I've been talking about it a lot in there too, because it's just like, what do you really fucking want? It is time to like go after those deep seated dreams, those desires that you might have buried or thought like, oh, I'll do that later. Like, no, bitch. No, it's time now, actually. It is time to step fully into your power now. So, very fun, exciting things as I wrap up June over here in my world. And at the same time, like, I'll be honest, like, I'm recording this podcast in my apartment, which is a beautiful apartment. But in my apartment, like, I have the laptop stood up on literally a roll of toilet paper. Like, this is entrepreneurial life also. So it's not like, it might all look glitz and glam on the gram, but it's not actually so glamorous at the end of the day. And I think even as you have more and more and more success, you're making more money, like it's still, sometimes it's just about just doing the damn thing and getting the message out there, and it doesn't need to be so perfect. Which perfectionism is a whole other tangent we could go off of, but I will spare you that for today. We'll save it for another episode of this podcast. So super fitting that I'm recording this today because I actually had a client session today that is closely related to what I wanted to talk about on the podcast today. So I'm going to talk first about that session, and then I'm going to go into my story of my experience with dark forces and how it shaped who I am today. I'm sure my understanding of them will continue to deepen as I grow and expand and move through this life. But yeah, so I had a session today with a new client of mine. Girl I've actually met like out in real life a few times, and I was a little hesitant about taking this session because her energy has a lot going on. Just there was a intensity and a darkness to her energy that says nothing about who she is as a person at all. Just she was running a lot of shit that isn't hers. And I do dark force clearings. Like I do lots of different type of energy work, whether we use the Akashic Records or not. The Akashic field is fantastic for incorporating ancestral work, past life work, for more deeper things that are not just of you and this lifetime. Like I love pulling in the Akash for that. And I also can do a lot outside of the Akash, and especially if things are of this lifetime, sometimes it's actually a bit easier to zero in because the Akashic field is just so vast and profound, and we love it. But that being said, I do tons of different types of energy work. If you follow me on social media, I make videos about a lot of it. I've never had a session be the same, even person to person. It's truly wild, the stuff that will come up in those sessions. And it's probably one of my favorite parts of my job, just really getting to work with being intuitively led by source, by the beings that govern the Akashic Records, by, the higher self of the client, to really create magic and produce really profound results. And that's part of why the women that I work with have these insane results. I also was asked this week, like, do I work with men? And to be honest, the answer right now is no. I would consider it for individual work, but in any of my programs, no. And yeah, that's just how I feel right now about it. It definitely can change. It was not always that way. But I've been really vibing with helping the collective feminine frequency on this planet rise and just really empowering women to become their fullness of themselves because, frankly, the women are ready for the type of deep transformational energetic work that I do. And as a collective, the men are not. I'm not saying, that's a generalization across the entire collective masculine frequency on this planet. But the men, yeah, I think they're going to get there. I've always heard 2027 is like the year of the masculine truly rising. They've been, getting pushed and prodded to step into their power, to step into their fullness, to their autonomy, to their sovereignty, to their soul potential for a bit. And again, this is a generalization, so I'm not saying there's not men out there who are doing beautiful work in service to others. There are. But yeah, I think 2027, we're going to see some major shifts in terms of the types of awakened men that are really sharing of their medicine and wisdom. And then also in the quality of the romantic relationships that we see between men and women in that classic heteronormative dynamic. So stay tuned. I'm excited because your girl's single right now. So we'll see. But yeah, I don't work with men at the moment. But yeah, we'll see. We always just follow the intuitive guidance over here. Anyway, I was hesitant to just take this on because I'm like, God, I am not your strongest soldier. Like, I don't know if I can do that type of clearing work with this level of interference that this client is running. And again, without like going into too many specifics, and also before, I don't tap into other people's energy necessarily unless they invite me to, unless, we're in a setting. But I am an extremely energetically sensitive person. So if I'm physically around somebody having a conversation with them, I can kind of like get a feel for what might be going on in their field. And yeah, she had a lot. So I was hesitant about it. But again, we follow intuitive guidance over here, and my soul and the guidance around it was very clear to do the session. So I had this session today, and it was really interesting because her core essence, her soul essence is beautiful and extremely powerful, actually very courageous, really a way shower actually for other women, which is pretty common actually that I attract that type of clientele, you know. And for a while I was like, is something wrong with me? But like I keep telling everyone they're a way shower, they're a guide, they're a healer, and it's like, well, no, because they're attracted to my energy. So it, like attracts like. So, and we're gonna talk more about that today. So it makes sense. But yeah, it took me like I would say a couple years of offering one-on-one sessions to really understand that that is actually just reflective of my power and is a good thing, not a bad thing. And I'm not just like saying things that aren't true. So she has a really interesting life story because she was part of a very strict religious sect, again, without going into too many details, and actually decided to leave that strict level of that faith, leave the marriage that she was in, leave the community that she was in, and rebuild her life essentially from scratch. And that was like 2 or 3 years ago by now. And she came to me because she was struggling with like, I don't understand. I used to make more money when I was still in my community, when I was still in my, ex marriage. I'm really struggling with attracting abundance in all of its forms, with romantic relationships, with friendships, with maintaining clientele. And she, that's heavy. That's hard. And it's really hard when you make a really beautiful, courageous choice like that for yourself. And then your outer reality, instead of reflecting the abundance and the reality to match the courage of that decision, actually has everything come crumbling down. So it was really wild because I tapped into her field. We opened up her Akashic Records, and what was going on was actually that it's like I saw this massive, like, dark force entity attached to the collective that represents that strict religious sect, and also like ancestral and collective trauma in that cultural faith. and it was like feeding off of it. And essentially, because she opted to leave, she basically opted to step into the fullness of her authenticity. Like she was getting radically honest with herself. It's like she was getting targeted by this entity because the entity didn't want her, like it didn't want any other members of that collective to get any ideas because it's feeding off of them. Like it's literally like surviving off of that. And so I see this and I'm like, again, like, God, I am not your strongest soldier. Like, I like to think I'm really fucking powerful, but like, I am not taking on the entity feeding off of an entire religious and cultural collective. Like, I can't personally, at least right now, I can't personally take this on. But what we ended up doing was a really beautiful quantum healing session with her. I brought her, I'll do this sometimes for my more intensive healings, to different sacred sites, but in the astral, so like galactic sacred sites. And this one was in the Alpha Centauri star system, and it's like this really ancient temple. I actually first visited it on a past life regression that I did, and it was really interesting because in that regression, I didn't have a body, which is actually very normal in higher dimensions. Like there is no physical body. This is a very dense dimension that we have this physical form. But yeah, it was like kind of crazy because I was really viscerally experiencing not having a body. So anyway, that was the first time I was at that sacred site, and I felt really called to bring her back there because it really like it's an older, almost more like if we think of our earth energy as like Mother Earth, like that was more like grandmother energy. So it was older, wiser, more powerful, essentially. And then we pulled in like all these different ascended masters. We pulled in actually like literally the energy of the earth herself, like the Divine Mother. Yeah, we set up this whole sacred geometric grid for her. And what we ended up doing, again, like I'm just facilitating this, like it's assisted by all of these other beings of light. We ended up weaving into her spiritual body of her aura this permanent shield so that she can actually no longer be seen by that entity feeding off of the collective of the religion she left. So it was really cool. Like, I'll just say that. These things blow my mind all the time. That's why I make videos about them because I'm like, this is amazing. And it was very fitting for me to do this like very intensive, but really kind of like creative dark force healing. Because again, like I can't take that entity on myself, but we could prevent her from being impacted by it. And I'm super excited to hear how it all lands for her. And it was interesting because my sessions usually span like both the energetic work and a lot of like practical guidance, like channeled guidance, coaching tips. And really all she had to do was establish an energetic hygiene routine. Like everything else she was already doing. And I have so much like love and understanding for that when it can be like I'm doing all of the things and like nothing is working and nothing is shifting and changing. And babe, if you are doing all of the things truly, if you are truly taking radical honesty and accountability over your life and you are showing the fuck up and you are not seeing a change, that is an energetic problem. That is not a problem of like you need to work harder, you need to do more. That is a problem for energetics. So I would seek out me or anybody else who is really well versed in more advanced energetics to help you figure out what needs to shift and clear there. What I will say though is that I have, learned over the last few years that when I do healings on people who aren't actually energetically available for it, they're not actually wanting on some level to receive it. And it might be subconscious because, they've paid me, they've showed up to the session. But if your subconscious is resisting the work, you're either going to get some or none of the shift and the change that I'm doing in the energetic world. So it's really like I love particularly working with clients who are like, let's do the damn thing. Like, let's go there. Let's like fix this. Like they're in a space where it's like, I am willing to do anything that my soul calls for in order to expand my life. And sometimes that gets to be like fun shit, like be in more pleasure, self-pleasure more, go out more, work less. And sometimes it's like getting truly honest with yourself around like, okay, I'm the common denominator in all of the relationship challenges that I have. And yeah, relationship stuff, it's always a dynamic between two people or more. If it's like a friend group, for sure. It's never one person or the other in its entirety, even abusive situations. And people are going to like not love that I'm saying that. But to some extent, like you're allowing that. And you might, again, be like subconsciously allowing that because it's what you grew up around and you think it's normal. And you're, like, again, it can get really like nuanced. But in there's always like a role that we play when you're noticing these repetitive patterns in your life that you're like, I don't like this thing. It's not changing. It's not shifting. That's an invitation to turn deeply inward and be like, okay, some part of this is me consenting to this. And again, it might, and it probably isn't your conscious mind. But if your subconscious is not on board with changing, or at least open to it, we can only do so much when it comes to energetics. So again, this could be a whole book, I think, that topic, but just wanted to mention that before I talk more about dark forces. So, dark forces. Dark forces are a big part of why I am where I am and doing the work that I'm doing. I came into my spiritual awakening from a journey with my mental health. And it took me a long time getting really comfortable sharing and talking about that because, frankly, there's a lot of really disembodied people still who are not grounded in reality, who aren't really very effectively able to function, who certainly people who have what we think of as mental illness, but even people who have some understanding of spirituality and the component that energetics plays in mental illness, I say in air quotes, and I'll get to that. There's a lot of people who are really not grounded, I'll say. And, I'm a pretty grounded and reality girl. Like, yeah, I do all these crazy things in the quantum field, but, like I got Botox yesterday. Like I live in New York City. I'm going to be moving back to LA. That's coming too, by the way. That's been a big announcement and realization of the month of June. I don't know exactly when, but it is coming. I like the trappings of our human experience. Like I'm not trying to like leave and exit the human experience. Interestingly, when I was deeply covered and shrouded in dark forces, I was very much trying to exit the human experience. I was like, oh fuck no. And I was really suicidal on and off and went through extreme emotional highs and lows. And really had all of my tendencies, I call them in my work, but my more like Achilles heel aspects of my personality were dramatically amplified due to dark forces. So let me backtrack and talk about what are dark forces. So we live on a plane of duality in this 3D existence. In the earth plane, there is good and bad, there is positive and negative, there is up and down, and there is light and dark, baby. And all of that is part of our human experience. Now, as a soul, you wanted to come here. Like you fought to fucking come here. You might be like, what crazy bitch did that? No, but like you fought to come here, especially to be here right now with what's happening with the collective ascension and what is humanity on the whole is moving through. The souls that are here right now are like the strongest, the most advanced, the most powerful, again, might be in the bad side of things too, right? There's a spiritual war being fought on this planet, like straight up. Light versus dark. I actually channeled a cool thing. This was like a few years ago, but like I was on an edible in Colorado like 4 years ago, and I had this whole transmission come through that like the earth is an example for the wider galactic realm, that there's a battle being fought here, that there's so much at stake and invested in this battle. And, ultimately, yes, the light always wins. I truly believe that light energy and unconditional loving energy is all powerful. And it is more powerful than the dark, but there's a lot of eyes on earth right now in the galactic and other dimensional realms, because there's just a lot of interest in what happens right now. And I won't get too more into that because that's just getting really weird. But yeah, in the earlier phases of my venture into channeling work, I used to get really deep into the galactics and the aliens and channeling the Pleiades and the Syrians and the Pleiadians, rather. I kind of, and the reason when I teach intuition now and I teach channeling work, I keep it more specific to your human experience. It's just because you can, again, you can easily spin out on that. And also running other dimensional energy through your body is really hard in the body. So if you look up on YouTube and you see people who do trance channeling, like I can do trance channeling. I don't do it very often, if at all, anymore, because it's like really intense on your body. And frankly, like when it comes to all of this stuff, we want to always look at it through the lens of, is this useful? Because like the aliens, yeah, there's a lot I can say about that, but I just personally teach now to everyone who works with me that it's not particularly useful. It can be fun, it can be interesting, but to really keep your regular practice centered around your human experience, like you are a soul having a specific experience right now. So let's like keep it tight. Let's keep it tight to what you have going on, and not sort of spin ourselves out with everything that is actually going on in the universe. Um, but anyway, if we understand that, say myself, you probably listening to or watching this, anyone who's a client of mine, are a light worker meant to help humanity ascend, meant you probably have a portion of your soul's mission that is in service to others in some way. It's going to be in service to others, expressing your unique medicine, wisdom, and gifts. It's going to look different for every person, for every soul. There are definitely star families, and there's definitely like a lot of congruency between different souls. And so I'll certainly come across some people sometimes, and especially people that enter my space, where there's a similarity there. But at the end of the day, baby, like nobody's going to do it like you. Nobody is going to do it like you are, which is why you are important, and it's why you are here. And the highest expression of your potential in this lifetime is to share those gifts in service to others. So that's the light workers. And again, without like making this a 5-hour like podcast about all the different types of dark energy, all the different things at play in governments and politics and the collective scale and wars, and there's a lot happening right now on Earth. As much as there are human beings operating in service to the light, there are human beings operating in service to the dark. And there's also non-human energy that can kind of latch onto you that's not of the highest light and good. And it's probably originating from another dimension. Again, some people like teach entire courses about all the different types of dark forces and the demons and the ghosts and the transmortals, and like there's tons of different types of it. Frankly, like as somebody who was deeply infiltrated by dark forces for a lot of my life, I just don't find it particularly useful to go into all the different types. Now, what I've personally lived through and found is that the more that you alchemize your own inner darkness, the more that you contend with the dark that exists within you, because again, if you are a light worker and have a lot of capacity to hold light and be of service, you have an equal amount of dark that you have to contend with. And the alchemy process of contending with that darkness, of doing true shadow work, of really coming to terms with like our shadow side. And again, I do work in the Akashic Records. So a lot of times in past lives, like even if you are attempting or striving to stay in the light in this lifetime, you've probably spent many lifetimes operating in service to the dark too, because you have a lot of power. You old bitch, like you've been around for a long time. So, um, like I've personally seen a lot of lifetimes of mine that I was not operating in the highest light, that I used my gifts in a malicious or a manipulative way. Even manipulation is really sneaky because it's not like outwardly like, oh, like let me go kill that person. It's like, ooh, what can I get from them? It's a selfish motivation. It's not for the highest good of all involved. And that even is something, honestly, I have to contend with day to day with running a fucking business. Like, because it's really trippy having a business that makes money and ultimately supports me, but then I'm also trying to be of the highest light and good and truly be of service. So it's a balance, and we will catch ourselves when we slip into like slight selfishness or manipulation or manipulative tendencies. And again, the more you do this work and the deeper that you go into contending with your inner darkness, the more nuanced and kind of sneaky the darkness can get and how it shows up in your life. And it's truly fascinating. But there's a podcast episode I did last year on the old iteration of this podcast that really goes into depth of like my entire story and like how I came into this work and all my mental health struggles. So like I'm noticing now I've already been recording for a half an hour, so I don't have time on this one to go into all of that. Though if that is something that intrigues you, you can always go back to that old episode, or I can record another one on like all the specifics of like, again, how I came into this space. But essentially, I just had really serious, I'll say really serious for me, but I was super high functioning. Like I always had a job. I had a great job actually all through my 20s. I had a really beautiful career. Socially and romantically in my 20s, I struggled a lot. I spent a few years, I would say the years of like 23, 24, 25. I call them kind of like the dark years, sort of like the dark ages in recorded history. But for me, I don't have a ton of vivid memories of those years. It was I was kind of shooting in the dark. I was doing different types of energy work and holistic work. I had a therapist to help myself. I was definitely trying, but I wasn't really making a lot of headway. I would go get like a Reiki session or an integrated energy therapy session, which is actually a type of energy work I'm trained in. Or I found this modality called NIS that I'm forgetting what that acronym actually stands for, but I still see someone who is trained in that and incorporates it into her work. So I would find these different modalities, and like really briefly right after I would like feel better, and then pretty much immediately like I'd get a bunch of dark shit attached to me again. So and just be, really thrown off. And I was just spiraling into like a deeper and a deeper sort of anxiety, depression. I'd been diagnosed as bipolar 2, and then borderline personality disorder, and then regular bipolar through this time period. And it was really disempowering, to be honest, because what modern psychology thinks of in terms of treatment for things like bipolar 1 and 2 is pretty much just like, go to therapy and take your medicine. And then even borderline personality disorder, which is a bit more, I would say positive in their treatment that they offer for that, because theoretically, at least years ago when I was more up to speed on this, they were saying that you could cure it by doing dialectical behavioral therapy, which I did, DBT. I've done DBT, I've done CBT, I've done psychoanalysis. I'm not a trained therapist, but just like 2 decades of doing therapy has definitely comes into my work. I actually have some clients who are like, I'm going to get rid of my therapist. You're more helpful. So again, this is not medical advice, but it bleeds into a lot of my work because I've tried a lot of different things. Ultimately, the biggest game changer for me with my mental health was understanding energetic hygiene, was understanding what it means to clear my energy, what it means to understand when I'm running energy that isn't mine. Again, I'm so sensitive, like the ability to tap into the Akashic Records and do ancestral work and take people to galactic healing temples and vortexes doesn't come without its things that I also need to manage. So again, probably like many people who work with me, as well as probably you listening to this podcast, identify with some level of being more sensitive. And so if you think of yourself as a sensitive or empathic person, it's really important to maintain an energetic hygiene routine. I'm going to be coming out with like a really not very expensive sort of pre-recorded course about this, because I'm starting to realize like how important it is to get this message out to people. And really it was that I always think of two different tools that have given me the most profound changes in my life, which were learning about energetic hygiene and maintaining a routine around it was the first one. And then ayahuasca was the second one. So those two tools, it's like there's a distinct before and after of my life in incorporating and working with those tools. So, yeah, it was a massive part of my journey. And I personally didn't align with just the, oh, you need to just you take a pill forever mentality. Like, I am all about acute management of physical and mental health issues. Abso-fucking-lutely. I just personally don't really believe that taking something for the rest of your life should be the solution. It can be the temporary solution while you seek deeper healing. But I really, really believe that we can heal anything and everything that presents on the physical plane, truly. And I think modern medicine is actually going to advance to a point that we can heal I used to work in rare diseases actually for a lot of the jobs I held in pharma. And I do think that we'll get to a point, I hope I see it in my lifetime, but I absolutely know that like there's frequency medicine and energy medicine that can assist and cure a lot of these like rare genetic disorders. So even when you're thinking about something like that's like so life debilitating, I believe we will get there. I hope we will get there. Or I know we'll get there. Again, time frame, not exactly sure, but I know that humanity will get there and its understanding and what we have the technology to support. So, anyway, I have this whole background with dark forces, and I talk about energetic hygiene in like all of my programs because it's so important. I talk about inner darkness work and shadow work and true like alchemy of our darker pieces of self and integrating that back into who we are so we can utilize the power tied up in it. It's something that is an ongoing component of working with me. I do shadow work every single month guided in my group program in the new moon workshops. We just did it last night. So it's really important to have a regular practice around these things and to understand that like everybody is shades of gray. Like nobody is all bad or all good. And yeah, there's just a lot of people that have consented to operating in service to the dark because it's the faster way to get what you want sometimes. Things can be really tempting that are offered to people, especially as they have a bigger impact or more widely known. Like Hollywood is super fucking dark, like all over it. Again, like we don't have time to go into all the specifics on this particular episode, but yeah, in a nutshell, as much as there's light on this planet, there's also dark. And just having an awareness of it and an understanding of when you are being interfered with in some capacity is just really important because ultimately, as soon as we know that, it's actually really simple and easy to clear. Like the energetic hygiene process I teach is really fucking basic at the end of the day. And it's pretty rare that somebody doesn't have the capacity to clear themselves of what they are getting attacked by or running in their field. And really, they always do, but the human might not have known yet the tools that they need. So yeah, I love, I do a lot of clearing work in my work, just from the background that I come from and the story that I have, because it wasn't easy, man. Like, oh my God, it wasn't easy. Whew. But here we are now, substantively more stable in my life. Of course, we always have emotional highs and lows. That's part of the human experience. Life is going to life, shit's going to happen. But the big indicator that I give to people in terms of like, is it dark energy or is it energy that isn't yours? Or is it, actually just you moving through your experience? Is something specifically happening? Like, was there a specific trigger in your life that might be making you sad or depressed or tired? Or did it just kind of come out of nowhere and you can't pinpoint the source of it and your intuition's drawing a blank as to like where this is coming from? Same, just, like any symptoms that are more negative that you might be feeling, if they come out of nowhere, if they just hit you like a Mack truck, or like even you might have been dealing with this for months or years of your life, but you're like, I didn't, for example, I didn't have any extreme childhood trauma, neglect, abuse that would have resulted in the behavioral and mental and emotional issues that I was experiencing. I was just getting fucked with, essentially. So, yeah. Can you pinpoint the source of it? Is it coming from something specific in your life? If it is, that's probably just you moving through life and your ceremony of life that we're all in. And if you can't, again, might be a good time to ask your intuition if you have that capacity, is my energy clean and clear? And then just go through the process, because it's actually quite simple at the end of the day. But I wanted to share a story about dark forces that was really interesting for me that happened earlier this year. If we harken back to about February timeframe, I was in Encinitas. This is the same era as when I was like raving with my surf instructor from the last episode that we were talking about. And because I was living right by the beach, I know if you're watching the video of this, like my hair is all blown out and nice. It's actually filthy dirty, to be clear. But dirty hair, I always get the most compliments on my dirty hair. And yeah, if you need some tips and tricks for how to like make the dirty hair work, like I have got all the tricks, because I barely wash my hair. It's kind of disgusting. But I have a lot of really thick, I have a lot of hair. I have actually like very like pretty curly hair and very frizzy hair. So by the beach, my hair was being crazy. Like it was being quite a lot. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to get a keratin treatment. Like I do an organic one when I'm in New York with an amazing hairdresser in Williamsburg. And then I most recently did a different treatment that wasn't like quite organic, but like no formaldehyde and nothing like cancerous, we hope, in it with my girl Ellie, who cuts my hair and now colors my hair, and she's phenom, and she's actually a client of mine. So she's a gem. Shout out to Ellie. So she did my most recent treatment, but back in February, like I hadn't had a keratin in a long time. And I was like, you know what? I'm living by the beach. Like I look kind of nutty. Let me go get a keratin treatment. And Southern California, like it's like a beauty hub. There's tons of options. And I really wanted the same product that I'd been using. And so I'd like reached out to a bunch of different salons that said they carried that product. Nobody was calling me back, and nobody was responding to their Instagram DMs or their emails at these different places I was checking out in North County, San Diego. And I was like, what the fuck? Because like a week goes by and I'm like, I really need to get my hair done. So finally, I'm like, okay, maybe it's fine if I don't use the same exact like organic one I have been using. Let me just look on Yelp, good old trusty Yelp, and see if there's somebody who specializes in keratin that I can go to. So I look up on Yelp, and I'm in Lucadia in Encinitas, and there's this business that says it's in Del Mar, which is very close by, maybe like 15, 20 minutes away in north of San Diego. And it says Alyssa Baxter Keratin. And I'm like, okay. So I text Alyssa Baxter and I'm like, hey, I give all my I don't like my hair being like super flat. I like to keep some volume. I don't want any of the really like strong, more chemical treatments. Like I don't want that in my body on my hair. What can you recommend? And she was like, okay, I would suggest this one. And interestingly, as I'm recounting this, I remember she was kind of like sassy and didn't want to like answer my questions. And I was like, well, dude, like I'm not gonna buy a $400 treatment unless you answer these questions, my dear. But I get it, as a business owner, I get it when somebody's like, you're like, just book a session. Like, I don't know, I can't answer all these questions. So I get it. So I'm communicating with Alyssa Baxter, and I'm just like, okay, like Alyssa Baxter. And I'm like, I had this funny feeling about it, but my intuition was telling me to go to her. So because I checked in a few times. And so I was like, okay, like I don't know why I feel a little funky about this, but clearly I'm meant to go have this service, meet this woman. And I go to her space in Del Mar, and she, not unlike a lot of women I work with, actually, like the two different hair people I have in New York both have this, where they own their own business and they like rent like a single space. They're not part of like a larger salon. Like they were before, and now they've gone off on their own. And so she had one of these types of spaces in Del Mar. And I go into her space and I get there, and like I don't know what I thought, like who I pictured in my head with Alyssa Baxter. Like that sounds like a very white kind of regular American name, right? I get in there, and there's like this 70-year-old, like long dark hair surrounding her, wearing all black, like definitely is like well into her 70s, but is stunningly beautiful. And like her face looks quite young. And I'm like, looking at her like, who are you? And she has this like intensity about her aura and just like, and I'm like, okay, this woman's a little bit like scaring me, but I'm here and my intuition told me to come and I need to get my hair done because it's so frizzy. So I'm just gonna like roll with it. And so I just start like chatting with her. I tell her what I want my like the result to look like. To be fair, like this is her whole thing is keratin treatments. That's like all she does. So she was definitely like super knowledgeable about them. And so she's washing my hair and she, I think I mentioned like I have my own business and she starts asking me about my business. So I start sharing about it. And I'm like, yeah, I do like spiritual teaching and coaching work with women. I have a group program. I work with people one on one. I have a membership, blah, 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 like the whole spiel. And she was like, "Oh, I'm a deeply spiritual person." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool. Maybe this is why I was like needing to be here." And so then as she's starting to do my treatment, she is asking me, she's like, "So what got you into this work?" And so I start telling her my little spiel about my mental health and dark forces. Um, in a bit more condensed of a version than I gave on this episode today. But it's interesting because I don't always share that, especially with a stranger. Um, and she starts revealing that she has this deep connection with dark energy. And she looks at me and she's like, "You're sleeping on half of your power." And I'm like, well, Alyssa Baxter is really like, oh, the other piece of this too. Sorry, I forgot this part was that she's Persian, which is funny because my mom's Persian and that's like a big part. That's been a big part of my life, my entire life, that culture, that lineage. My last serious relationship, he was Persian. So like it's very much like ingrained into me. And talk about paramount past lives where I've previously been operating in the dark. There's a life in ancient Sumer that has come up quite a lot in different work that I've done, past life regression work, work in the Akashic Records, readings I've had that, and then there's a lot of players in my life right now that were also players in that life. So I've started coining that term paramount past life. I've never heard anyone use that. I think that's a Savannah original. And it's really these, we have so many past lives, but there can be one or like a few that you're here right now to move through the karma and the lessons that you couldn't finish in that lifetime. So, yeah, ancient Sumer, by the way, was like the where then the Persian Empire came to be, and then modern day Iran. So turns out she's Persian, even though Alyssa Baxter is not a Persian name. And I'm like, wait, that's not a Persian name. And she's like, well, my ex-husband, that's his last name. And then she's like, and my real name. And this is the crazy part, was like when she said her name, I could not hear her. And so I was like, wait, what is it? She says it again, can't fucking hear her. It was like she's moving her mouth and no sound is coming out. And I'm like, okay, this is weird. And I'm like, is this like a sigil? Like, has this woman like in a different life, did somebody put a sigil? Did she put a sigil on me or did I put one on her so that like she can't, because that's what that will do is that it sort of blocks like the flow of energy or the sound in order to see, so I can't know her name. And I'm like, what is happening? I like witchcraft. I used to be a lot witchier with my stuff. I sort of put it aside for now. I could come back to it. But yeah, this woman, so she's like looking at me and she's like, you're sleeping on half of your power. Like, why aren't you doing your witchcraft? Why aren't you? And I'm like, because she's like, she seems to like know. And I'm like, well, in like earlier stages of my journey, I was a lot witchier and I accidentally did some manipulative things because I was messing with another person's free will. And when we do that, there's a retribution karmically that will come back upon you because it's not 100% in unconditional love and of the light. You are trying to, like, what I was trying to do years ago was force certain things to happen, make certain things happen in my timeline, make a specific man come back into my life. And, I did this whole spell Halloween actually of 2021, like this whole ritual. It was like it took me all night. It was like this whole thing. I don't think I realized, like I didn't plan like in advance. I wasn't like on Halloween I'm going to be doing a whole ritual to bring back my ex-boyfriend. But I did end up doing that. And yeah, then I got really sick for like a week straight. We actually did get back together, and he told me later, he was like, "What the fuck was the first week of November that like I couldn't stop thinking about you." And I'm laughing, and I told him what I did, and he was like, "You're crazy. Like you are like," and I was like, "Yeah, I am." But anyway, after that experience, there was a couple other things like that where I didn't quite realize what I was doing was manipulative, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to take a beat from like trying to like force things in a certain way. And I'm actually going to allow myself to be led. And so a lot of what I've been working on over the last few years is taking a backseat of my control energy and just allowing God, source, universe, my higher power, my higher self to show me, allowing for things to unfold in divine timing. It is a practice for me. Let me say it is a practice because your girl is very impatient and I want what I want when I want it, you know? And I've been really learning how to soften that, really learning how to deepen into trust, really learning to co create and not just be like overly forceful and dictatorial with my field and my energy. And because I've done that, I've manifested big things. I sort of forced the whole timeline in that last serious relationship I was in with us moving in together. And then it crumbled from underneath us because we weren't ready to live together. And, you know, that's a whole other thing for a different day. It's a long story, but I can own wholeheartedly my role in that, which was like, I was trying to force things to happen before, frankly, either of us were ready for things to happen. So when we do that, that's when we can't sustain things. That's when you might be able to manifest like the apartment or the job or the man, but you can't actually hold it in your life. Like it crumbles. It's like a house of cards. Um, so yeah, so she's like, and then she starts talking to me, going back to my Alyssa Baxter experience. She starts talking to me about like demons and how demons aren't actually bad, that she allows demons in her house all the time. And like she starts going into these different types of darker, what I understand is more malevolent energy. And so, and what she was saying, the point she was making, the book she was recommending to me, because I did check them out. I was like, I'm gonna curious. I'm gonna like check this out. It made sense. Like she was like making sense. And I was following the logic and I was like, oh, maybe there is something to this, you know, like dualistic plane that we love on. Maybe I shouldn't be sleeping on like working with this type of energy. And again, when this woman is entering my field back in February, I was at a place in the business that I wasn't making money, the money I needed to make. Like it was growing, but if there was somebody that was going to offer me like a shortcut, it was a very tempting position that I was in to take it. And I was also really up leveling and stepping into more of my power and attracting a lot more clients into my field and like really having more of my gifts come online in a really beautiful way. So it was like I'm having this whole up level that I'm moving through. And also, the up level hadn't yet translated in the physical to the business and financially. So there was very real human emotions in me that were scared, that were freaked out, that were like, I don't know, like I was still in the paradigm of like, is this going to work? Like, is this dream I have, is this vision I have for myself, like, is it going to work? Because I hadn't had the evidence yet. So she comes into my field at this point in time where I'm a little bit more easily tempted than I am in recording this in June. And it really took a lot of me. So, and again, then she starts going into like, she's like, Satan is so attractive. And then I'm like, oh, this woman's like on a whole other thing. I'm like, Satan is attractive. Like, I'm like, what is she talking about to me? So that part, I was like, no. But the book she recommended to me and the point she was making about like utilizing demons, I was like, this is interesting. Let me like ponder this and check this out. So I leave Alyssa Baxter. I did call one of my friends out in LA who's Persian, and I was like, you're never gonna guess like who just did my keratin treatment. Like, dude, it was like an ancient Persian witch. Like, I swear to God. I was also like, do you live here? And she was like, no, I live 2 hours away in the mountains. And I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, I swear on my life, like I could perhaps go back to that exact same strip mall in Del Mar, that same studio rental space. And like, I don't think this lady is there anymore. Like, I seriously think she was sent to tempt me. And luckily, I did not take the bait. And despite not taking the bait, things are still moving forward in my life in a really beautiful way. So I'm super glad that I didn't. But I do think that this happens more often, like as you start to step into the fullness of your mission, into more of the public eye, you maybe gain more fame. Like again, that's why a lot of Hollywood celebrities are very infiltrated with dark forces because they cut a deal. They're like, I want to be famous, I want to be rich. It's really hard out there for an actor, right? And it's a shortcut. It's a shortcut to what you want, but then at what cost? And there's always a cost when you're not operating in divine timing and when you're not co-creating with just source. There's always, always, always a cost. So I had to unpack that whole experience for a bit with like one of my teachers, with my other friends who are intuitive and well versed in dark forces. And one of my friends made a really good point. She was like, well, because I was like, but this makes sense what she's saying. And like this point, and I like, and she was like, well, of course it makes sense because, it's like they're smart. Like if they're going to try to infiltrate me, who's, a pretty intelligent, powerful woman, they have to be smart. They have to make some sense. But if there's always like a twinge of like something feels a little off here. Like it shouldn't be like that would immediately result in the outcome that I desire. Cause she was like drilling into me. She was like, you need to be doing your witchcraft. You need to be tapping back into your like capacity for that. And again, we can do like witchcraft that is non-manipulative. That's essentially what manifestation is, but you're not coercing the energy. You're trusting. You're saying like, hey, this or something better. This is what I want. I'm going to work on my thoughts, my belief systems, my emotions, who I'm being. And I'm not going to dictate it has to be with this person in this place at this time. When you start to dictate those things, that's when we get manipulative energy. That's when things can crumble from underneath us, even if we do get the thing in question. And yeah, former versions of me were really fucking into making things happen in a very small amount of time. I still struggle with that, to be honest. Like it's hard at times to like hold the faith and trust when you don't see the result in the physical. But just know that if you are doing it in a dark, manipulative way, it's gonna come back to bite you in the ass. So anyway, that was my little test from, I think, the universe with dark energy this year so far. It was pretty funny. Of course, it would come in the form of a Persian witch doing a keratin treatment to me. And yeah, I actually looked into my Akashic Records and asked like, if her energy was present in that paramount past life that I mentioned. And I got that she was Satan himself. And I'm like, oh, okay. And interestingly, in not sort of taking the bait with that, the business doubled from February to March anyway. So the light has always got your back. Like we love the light. I love God. I love God. No, I'm kidding. But like I do. Like it's operating in that way, it's just cleaner energetically. Like, are there people having success? Are there people that famous, many of them who have made deals with the dark? Absolutely. But do you want the karmic retribution that comes with that? Probably not if you're listening to me. So, anyway, that's my little spiel about dark forces today. And I think that's where I'm going to call it today because this one got a little long because I can talk about dark forces for apparently forever. Um, Again, it's been a huge part of my journey. It's a big piece of my work that I teach. I know it sounds like a comic book, but you know what? Like, there's a lot of validity in a lot of those in the stories that we love for entertainment. There's a lot of truth in them. So make sure your energy is clean and clear. If you need help with that, you know where to find me. And like I said, we cover a lot of the ongoing shadow work and the energetic hygiene stuff in my group work. So if that is speaking to you and you want to tap into more of your confident, embodied feminine power, get in during this round. We're going to be delving into all the things feminine energetics in the next few months. So I love you so much and thank you for hanging out with me today. Bye bye.